Let's pray. Lord, we thank you that you, as always, are a God who surprises us and steps up and does amazing things in our life, even when we don't see it coming. And for all those things, we are thankful. We really are. We take them for granted far too often. We don't always appreciate how it is that you are at work in our life, but yet we trust that it's happening. We trust that it's real, and it is. And so God, I pray this morning that we would wrap up our conversation about gentleness and being good, kind, and seeing that as a way to make change in the world. We need to remember that, because sometimes the world that we live in, it doesn't quite work out that way. And so, Lord, if we ever lived in an era before that needed to see you for who you really are, this is it. And so, God, help us to shine brightly into a world of darkness. Help us to see you and see you clearly, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, go back. Proverbs 15:1 is where we started this. And I shared with you that proverb that said basically, a gentle answer turns away wrath. That was the very first week, very first thing we said right out of the box. And I said that there is a gentle answer that we have. It's our secret weapon in the world around us, and we talked about it, and we talked about it being gentleness. The biblical definition of gentleness, though, we talked about this fact, is power under control. Jesus becomes our model for that. Think of it this way, controlled strength. And so what we're doing right now as we're kind of wrapping up is we started talking about how to weaponize your gentleness. And so that's kind of, as crazy as that sounds, that's what we're talking about. We should be able to get it done today. It shouldn't be a problem. I think that last week we got a couple in. I'll go back and review real quick, and then we'll just keep going with new stuff. But this was a very practical, boom, how do you do it? That's what we're talking about now. I think I said last week, tell me if I did I say learn to be a good listener? Yes. Okay, all right. We'll pick up right there, and we'll just keep going again. I said I think one of the best ways to show compassion is to listen. And there's a difference between hearing and listening. We talked about the dynamics of speech. You know, someone said one time, I share this with couples in premarital counseling, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that relationship. In other words, listen twice as much as you talk, and you will probably be successful in life. You'll probably be successful in relationships that way. But we're not real good at that. We're real good at talking. We're real good at chatting. We're real good at trying to let our opinions be known. And the thing that's rough about the culture that we're in today, maybe in an era that we never had before, is because we have an elevated view of our opinion. A lot of it has to do with the rise of social media. And those kind of outlets, but now everybody feels like they're an expert in everything. And because we don't do it necessarily face to face, because we can do it now disconnected, we can do it electronically, we feel like we can dispense our opinion with no consequence behind it. But there's always consequences behind it. Frankly, I get embarrassed for people. With some of the stuff that they write and they rant about. And, you know, the good news is that usually they don't have a whole lot of followers and no one's really listening, which is good. But I tell you, it certainly emboldens people. And I think the sad part about that is it's emboldened people to the point where it really does reveal what's going on inside of them. See, I used to think people were smarter and more spiritual until we could read about them on social media. And now I realize that, you know, gosh, man, it's just tough. Mark will tell you this and can affirm this. You know, you talk to David, he'll tell you this. I mean, one of the things that I've tried to be really careful with, at least in our social media with the church, and we always need to do better. We need to do bigger. But you know, we don't do a lot of ranting. We do a lot of information. You know, we try to edutain a little bit, entertain a little bit. But here's where I am as a teacher and as a student of the Bible. I don't think you communicate anything of any worth that will change people's lives in social media. I think as a medium, it's been marginalized. I don't think it does that. I think social media now, for more than anything else, for those that really like to just beat on keyboards, it gives them a feeling of having an audience, having an opinion, letting them communicate. But really, realistically, it doesn't change anything. Don't believe me? Read the comment section at the end of an article, right? You know, read the comments that come back on stuff. You know, I think that's the insanity of most of it. I get tickled when I read people who are fighting on social media. That's the dumbest thing in the world. You know, you got a problem, pick up the phone, take care of it. You know, but I mean, you know, when people want to escalate this battle and they're putting everything in writing, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you just need to stop it. You need to stop it, because it has allowed us to create a false impression of ourselves. Now, when I say be a good listener, so again, you got to learn to listen to people. One of the ways that I've learned to listen to people, though, is by reading some of their posts on social media and going, woo, they got a world of stuff going on in them. Because in order to reach into their world, you've got to have you've got to have a way to at least try to understand where they're coming from. And once you understand them, then two things can happen. You can respond to them better, or you can refuse to respond to them at all. And I got news for you. Sometimes there are some people out in your world and in your orbit that you ought not to respond to. I know I have them in mind. You know, as I often tell people, you know, that will comment or email me, and even if this is email, you know, I mean, I tend to go. My rule is one response per crazy. Right? I mean, I'll give you one pushback if you're crazy, and usually I tap out after that. Half time I want to read what the responses back are. Too many emails, not enough time. You know, but it doesn't mean that in a relationship that matters and is important, you got to be a good listener. You have to be able to kind of get in there and figure out what's going on. You got to figure out who you're dealing with. We have a series that's coming up. It's going to start next week. We are still plot twisting. The following week, of course, this dates us for this recording that we're doing, but if you're following us online somewhere, you can figure this out. We have a guest speaker. Glenn Rogers is coming in from the East Coast Baptist Association, formerly the Seminole Baptist Association. Glenn Rogers is going to come in and fill in pulpit for me. I'll be out that week selling my little books. And so I'll be in Lexington, Kentucky. I'll be going to God's country, to the holy city, Lexington. Used to be Jerusalem, now it's Lexington, home of Kentucky basketball. Ironically, I'll be there while the Wildcats are in the Bahamas playing in a tournament, but neither here nor there. Obviously, I didn't get the draw to go cover the tournament in the Bahamas. But I will be there, and then coming back, and we're going to do a series that will take us through 5 weeks, including our birthday week, called Driving You Crazy. I'm going to talk about how to deal with the crazies in your world and the crazies that surround us. And how that will help. I noticed, so you figure out whatever. So the crazies, how to deal with the crazies in your life, and just why crazies are just so crazy. What do we do about that? And so we'll have some fun with that. So because again, it's hard to navigate in the world, and until you listen to them, you don't know they're certifiably crazy. I mean, you really don't. And even to come back with being able to push back into the life with goodness. I mean, how you deal with a crazy, and I'll say that loosely right now, is different than how you deal with someone who's really is coming from a position of sanity. I mean, you can only accomplish so many things, and so you have to learn to be a good listener. You have to learn to listen, because again, if you're going to share the goodness of God, keep that power, that controlled strength, and that power. You've got to be able to know who it is you're dealing with. The second thing I talked about was be empathetic, and I said there's a difference between being sympathetic and empathetic. Being empathetic doesn't mean being empathetic means you're putting yourself in another person's shoes. You don't have to have the same experiences, but you can try to understand it. You don't have to be disabled to understand the disabled. You try to understand the other person's feeling. It starts with listening, ends with seeing the world through the other person's eyes. Sympathy, you feel sorry for people. Empathy means that you're in position to be compassionate and show a gentleness and a goodness that you can't any other way, and that's different. And sometimes we stop at sympathy. You know, I'm sorry, I'll send a flower. You're sympathetic, and that's nice. But then I'll send a flower, but then do they have enough to eat? Do they need their house cleaned? Do they need a ride? Do they need money? Do they need something else? That's where the empathy piece begins to kick in. And that's compassion at a different level. And if we're going to show the goodness of God, and we're going to answer in a world that needs to hear it, then empathy really does matter, and it becomes important. I mean, we live in a world where people are really good at, saying our thoughts and prayers are with you. And it's almost trivial now to hear that. Some people, I believe that their thoughts and prayers are with me. For other people, they say it and I go, okay, yeah, maybe they are. Hopefully they're praying. But if my thoughts and my prayers and my actions are with you, oh, that's different, right? So my thoughts, my prayers, and my actions. How can I help? That's huge. And so in order to show the goodness of God, there's sometimes that we have to step in. Can you do everything? No. But can you do something? Sure. Learning to do that. It's even we talk about, that even has some hints of what we talked about in worship already this morning. We have a responsibility to do something with what God gives us. And so we have to figure out how to do that. And I think I talked about empathy last week, didn't I? Yes. Okay. All right. So this is now new stuff? All right. Gosh, we still have a little time. Who knew? Who knew the review would be so long? All right. Become an advocate. In other words, the Bible calls us to step in for those that need help. There are plenty of persecuted people in the world. There's plenty of organizations in the world. There's plenty of oppressed people in the world. I mean, they're not that hard to find. And so there's a lot of ways to become the voice for the voiceless. There's a lot of ways to get involved. There's a lot of ways to find ways that you can become an advocate, a crusader, a helper in certain areas. You just have to figure out what it is. Everybody's called it something different. That's based on our personalities, our gift mix, the wiring that God has placed in us. You might care, about dogs. I might care about chickens. That's how we're wired. Okay. I mean, it could be, you care about the homeless. And I care about students. You could care about gun violence. I could care about world hunger. I mean, you can figure out where you want to fit. We all have our roles. I want Christian people to be the spokespeople. I want them to be voices in all those areas, and we all need that, right? We need followers speaking out in every area. And to think that we don't is silly, because we can't just hunker down and hide. We have to be people and agents of change, and to do that, we have to get involved. When we get involved, people can find out how good we are and how kind we are and how gentle we are. And people will find out how important it is for us to be able to share and to make the world of those around us better. And so being an advocate is helpful. And again, there's a lot of ways to do it. You just have to be creative. I mean, there's a lot of ways to plug in. There's a lot of things to do. And you just have to find that niche and be willing to do that. But the goodness that you have in those environments, I mean, the way that you reflect your faith is huge. Tied into this is probably learn to volunteer, right? I mean, be a volunteer. In other words, sometimes volunteering is as simple as going and offering your time, saying hello, spending a few minutes talking. Your time is a valuable asset. It demonstrates great care, compassion. Joining an outreach effort to do something else as a volunteer, big deal. Your gifts come into play here as well. What are you gifted to do? What are you better to do? And I know that one of the things that we do as a staff that you may or may not be aware of, and we do it periodically and randomly. We did it again a couple of weeks ago, Friday before last. As we will load up in whatever vehicle we have, whichever one can hold us all, and we're off to see the folks that don't get to get out. Usually those visits turn into longer than we thought. We never get to as many as we thought we could get to, but we go. But then sometimes you make the call. And we were to call a church member who has not been with us for a long time, who suffered a number of strokes, lost the ability to really communicate and speak. So we pull up in the driveway, and you kind of figure out, okay, how do you do that? We don't want to invade with all of us now because we've expanded the staff, so it's even more people now in the merry little bus as we're traveling along, so you can overwhelm people. So quick little count of who's who in the van and stuff like that. So Michael and I decided, okay, well, we'll go in, everybody else stay outside. So as not to overwhelm the woman and her husband, by the way, who in my lifetime has never come here, but she did. But again, Ernie, very gracious to see us again. We've been there before, but Michael and I had been there before. And so instead of rolling into the house with the whole song and dance act like we do some places, Michael and I went in and did our thing. We're able to kind of kneel in front of the woman and kind of share with her. She kind of answered with her eyes. We had the opportunity to pray with her and talk with her and kind of connect with her because we know her a little bit better. But then, we also went to see Miss Mavis, and Miss Mavis, the whole party went inside, and that was, we made fun of her artificial dog that sits by her chair, and we talked about her family, and we talked about life, and and of course, she didn't care if any of us were there. She likes Michael, she likes Michael more than the rest of us, but that's okay, so we got to talk and chat, and so over the course of a day, we're hitting those kind of places because again, you just figure out where your giftedness comes in. Who's the best one to go talk in this environment? Who do you need to go? Who needs to make this call? And understanding that and finding that takes you off the hook in one way because you don't have to do everything, but you also get to do something, and you get to find your role and your place, and you can find that place where you can best connect. And so if you're going to put your goodness into action, if you're going to weaponize that goodness, you've got to put yourself in those environments where you can be good. No one knows you're good if you never leave your house, right? That makes sense. So how are you going to be out and be good in public? Well, you have to find a place to volunteer. The other thing that I would say, and this sounds like it goes exactly opposite, but it's not, is also to weaponize your goodness, you have to be private. So I just told you to volunteer. I just told you to get out and do things, but now I'm telling you to be private. What I mean by that, though, is learn to keep confidence. Learn to be that person that can display goodness by holding on to those things. One of the things I had to come to grips with years ago as a pastor is that I was going to know stuff about people that no one else was going to know. And you got to be okay with that. And you also got to keep your mouth shut, even among your closest friends and the people that you trust the most. Because again, they didn't say you can share this with your closest friends. They said, I'm sharing this with you. Please keep this to yourself. Okay. Well, I just took everybody else off the list then. And I have to keep that to myself until such time that they have shared it with someone else. And then if they've shared it with someone else, there's a common ground, then okay, we might talk about it. But for the most part, no, you just keep it to yourself. And it's not that I'm the great keeper of great vast secrets of information, but for some people I do. I know junk about people. I keep a file. No, I don't. I don't keep a file. I don't write it down. I don't keep a file. I keep it on a computer. It's on a hard drive. No, I don't keep any of that. I always tell somebody too, if I'm writing something down, I'm writing something down just so I don't forget. This is my prayer reminder. I'm not writing down anything intimate here. This is just a note for me to remember how to pray. But you have to be that kind of person. Because if you don't, then you're not going to be trusted the next time. And it's always amazing, and I'm always intrigued, because here's what I have noticed. There's a pattern that happens in ministry. I will have somebody that looks at me and says, I need to come talk with you. Okay, that's always a good start. And I always throw it back on them. Email me. Call me. We're not going to set up today. We're not going to set up standing at the door because one of us is going to forget. Probably me, but it might be the other person. One of us is going to forget. Takes me off the hook because my memory will certainly, it will get cluttered. But if they don't email me, then it's not important. If they don't call me, okay, it's not important enough yet. But usually it doesn't go away if it's a big deal. No, eventually we'll call. and set up an appointment or figure out a time that we can talk or chat. The other thing I try to open up for people to do, and you can do this as well, is, is this the kind of thing that we want to, you want to set up a time to talk? Can we cover it, we want to talk for an hour, or can we cover it in 5 minutes on the phone? There are some things that are 5-minute conversations on the phone. For my time, their time, sometimes that's better, and I will tell people, if they come in, especially in crisis, okay, especially if there's something else going on, I can give you 4 minutes right now, or I can give you an hour later in the week, or 30 minutes later in the week, or whatever we need to do, so you tell me which is best. You make the call, so I'm going to throw it back on you, okay, because I want to meet your need. I want to meet you at your point of need. If we need to solve this right now, we have a short window. If you need to unpack, and I need to have that information to help you best, then we need to set up a later time. Nothing wrong with that. That's not being mean. That's not saying you don't want to talk to somebody. That's just learning to navigate. There's an interesting pattern that takes place among people, is that sometimes there are people, and I've seen it, and I could actually rattle off a list of people over the past 5 years here who have done this very same thing. I need to talk to you. They come in and they dump their truck. They tell me what's going on in their life. They tell me their dirty little secrets, and they never show up again. Because now I know about their life, and I know they're a mess. And I always try to encourage them, say, well, you're not the only mess around here. There's a lot of people who are just as messy, probably more messy than you. But then they don't want to come, they don't want to look at me anymore, because I know their stuff. I know their secret. I know their family junk. I know their whatever. Which, I'm like, well, why'd you come tell me in the first place?
Because you're a train wreck.
Yeah. I mean, there was one person in particular, I'm not going to tell you where, I'm not going to tell you why, but she came in and she dumped her truck, and I never saw her again. I finally saw her at a public event. And I saw her across the room, and she avoided me until I finally caught her, walked across the lobby, met her, said, hey, it's great to see you. I've been missing you. Gave her a hug, said, I love you. Just want you to know that. Just, how you doing? You'd have thought that I'd just taken a burden off of her back. And I'm thinking, okay, you're the one that came and talked to me. I didn't ask you to. You came and told me these things about your life, and your life is a mess. It's okay. You can be a mess. You don't have to be embarrassed for your mess. Because I promised her. There's a lot of people I know that have messier lives than her lives. I love the people who are a mess and transparent about it. I just think that's healthy. I think to be a healthier mess, you've got to be transparent enough to let people in on that, and at least people that can help. As a pastor, I get to be in that role sometimes, but I think the trustworthiness is that you've got to be willing. Also, and you have to be willing to be that person that's going to say, if you trust me enough to tell me this, do you trust me enough to know what to do with this information? Because sometimes you hear things that you've got to do something about. If someone comes in, walks in my office and says, I'm thinking about killing myself. Okay, do you trust me enough to do something with this information? Because I'm going to do something with this information. I just can't let you walk out the door and kill yourself. So you have to pick up and start doing from there what needs to be done. And I always tell people, you can't put me in that judgment call place, because if you go out and kill yourself and I could have done something about it, that's on me. So I got to do something now. And those are trickier conversations to have. But you got to have them. I mean, you got to be able to do that. And hopefully, if someone's coming to talk to you, and you get that kind of relationship with someone, you're trustworthy enough to do that. But you have to learn, that part is the privacy part. To show goodness to people, you have to be compassionate enough to do what needs to be done to be effective. Okay, that's one of the ways you weaponize goodness. Number next, whatever this is, I have no idea. Be a giver. The greatest asset you have is your time. If someone gives me their time, I never, ever take that for granted, because you can't replace it. It's limited. The clock's always ticking. So you're always running out of this. This is an asset you're always running out of. You're always running out of time. You have less time today than you did this morning, and so you don't want to waste your time. But when you give your time, it shows compassion. In other words, whatever you're giving your time to, there's value in that. And so it's people. It's places, it's things, it's scenarios, obviously there's some people that, when they call, if there's any humanly way possible, I will pick up that call every time. But also there's some times where, if you call me and I'm in the middle of something else and I can't get to it right away, it's not that I don't value you. It's just that, okay, you can't cut through that list of my family, right? I mean, you can't cut through that list of, these people who knew in the middle of a project, for example. Closing on this property. I mean, my gosh, I can't tell you how many times our attorney called and interrupted whatever I was doing, to the point where I finally had to cut a deal with our attorney, who's a great guy, by the way. He was working on this during his vacation, and his wife was giving him grief about it. So I asked him at one point, I said, put your wife on the phone. And they were coming back from the beach, and I said, you need to leave your husband alone. He's doing God's work, woman. Now, she doesn't know me, okay? She doesn't know me at all. But I heard him laughing. She didn't laugh. She didn't think that was funny. But I had a nice conversation with her and told her how much I appreciated her sharing her husband with us as a ministry and stuff like that. And then when I got him back on the phone, I said, look, man, I know that you're Catholic. I said, so this will resonate with you. I'm going to give you a letter for 3 free sins. And you can use your 3 free sins to do anything you want with, and I'm going to give you a letter that you can show to God when you get to heaven one day that I wrote you 3 free sins. He goes, man, that's the best offer I've had in a long, long time. I said, that's what you get when you work for us, man. That's what you get when you work for us. And he goes, as long as you pay the bill, it's okay too. I mean, we'll pay the bill too. We'll get that bill paid. But I mean, again, he's a great guy, got a great sense of humor. But obviously, as we were trying to get this thing down to the wire, I told Jeff Bloom a couple weeks ago, I said, I have such a great respect for what you do for a living. Because this would drive me friggin' nuts to have to do this all the time. I mean, just that we're down to the wire, we're going to close, we're not going to close. We're going to close, we're not going to close. They need the paperwork, it needs to be done. I don't know how you do it, Jeff. I mean, I don't know. They don't pay you enough. We don't pay you enough. No one pays you enough. I mean, that's insanity.
I'm just dumb.
Well, I don't know what you are. I mean, I think you got the patience of Job, dude. It is the craziest. I mean, it is just insanity. I'm just like, this makes no sense to me. And I can't tell you how many times Jeff Bloom came down here and looked at paperwork for us and just kind of went through it, and how many times he got emails from me. I don't know what we're doing. What are we doing, Jeff? Do I need to do anything or not? If he said no, I didn't worry about it. Jeff said, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. If I had to do something, I would try to do it. It's just. But finding those people that would, give up time, and sometimes people will take priority of your time. And in a crisis, they do. You ever had a sick family member? The world keeps moving on, and all you do is take care of that sick family member. They gobble up every amount of time. If there's an illness, it gobbles up all your time. Why? Because again, you have to give that time to the things that are most important at any given time. Here's where we make a mistake, and I've told you, this is not new to you. We think time is ours. It's not. Time is a gift from God. Okay? So when you make a decision of how to give your time, you're making a decision how to use a resource that God has given you. Here's what I know. There will always be people who don't like how you choose to spend that time and may question how you spend that time because their priority or the thinking process is not the same as yours at any given moment. You have to be prepared for that. That's going to happen. It's going to happen to all of us. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it can create stress, but you have to navigate that too as well. Here's why, because time is so valuable. Time is so valuable. So you just want to make sure that you're doing the right thing, the best thing that you can with the time that you have. Understanding that if you do that, then at the end of the day, you just have to trust God and say, okay, God, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And people get it, they don't get it. I mean, that's what it is. Because when you're giving that time, I mean, you are, you're being compassionate. It's also resources. I mean, it's money. I mean, you can start using all of it. It's money, it's giftedness, it's whatever. I mean, I'm going to pick on Jeff Bloom again. He has a disposition, though. I mean, Jeff, some of you know, I mean, I'm not going to say anything I'm not supposed to say here. But, some of you know, the realtor we were dealing with has just been a real interesting piece of work. And, Jeff has quoted me, which really ticks me off, where I get to the point where I'm going to strike back. And then Jeff starts quoting to me, well, don't wrestle with pigs, which is one of my sermon titles. And basically he's telling me, when he says that to me, you said it to me this morning already, he just let it go. That's what he's saying. He's saying let it go long before Elsa was singing. And I appreciate that. He has that role. He has that right in my life. We've done a lot of life together, a lot of years. He can call me anytime and tell me that, and I will be offended and ticked off, but not badly. I'm just going to go on light. But Jeff has a disposition where he can navigate the intricacies. But I will tell you that I know that it's gotten bad when Jeff's response has a little bit of an edge to it. I'm like, oh, he hit Bloom's button now. I feel better about me because Jeff's finally mad too. But he's just got this position where he's able to navigate these kind of things, which is why he does it. I can't. It's not what I'm called to do and be. And you have to understand that the gift mix, your personality, all of that is a part of what you give. I want sane voices in the room. I want people who understand things. And I want experts in the room in areas that I'm not an expert in. I need them there. I can jump into a conversation as quick as anybody else, but I need the professional experts to know what we're hearing here, what's going on. I need those kinds of people around me. And in every environment, we need that. Don't be afraid of that. I call that sometimes your kitchen cabinet. Not that you do this, but if you were standing in a big enough kitchen, you were leaning back against the cabinet, who would you talk to? Who would you trust to give you that kind of information? That's your kitchen cabinet. You can call it your resource group, you can call it whatever, but you need that. You need those people in your life. And so I've got people on my phone that really, I would say, in a different era would say on speed dial. But basically, if I need to know this, boom, this is who I'm going to call. They'll know this answer. They'll know this answer. I need advice. I'm going to call this person. This is the person that goes. I know for some of you, I'm on that call list, and that's great. I like being on that call list. I like the fact that you're on my call list. You do that because, again, you're willing to give. That shows the goodness that God has placed in your heart. That's our secret weapon in a world that's crazy sometimes. And so, but be a giver. Don't be afraid to be a giver. You're called to be. Because here's the other thing, and let's bring it back to time again. I know people who value their time so much they do nothing for the cause of Christ. They do no good with it. They just squander this time. And the thing they don't understand is they can't manufacture the next minute. They may not get a minute. Not to be the great alarmist here, but I cannot tell you how many funerals I've done for people who died unexpectedly that thought they'd be here for the next 20 years.
I was wondering that because what brings forth in my mind when you're talking about this is storing up treasure in heaven. And we might get it as a subtraction, the time while we're here, but then it's an addition to, when we've gone to be with the Lord. And it didn't really register with me what that meant, storing up treasures in heaven. How can you do that?
Yeah.
Is there a heavenly ATM somewhere, or somewhere you can make deposits?
Sure.
How does that?
Heaven vault.
How do you feel about, this discussion and storing up treasures in heaven?
I've often wondered what that is too. I just think when I get to heaven, I'm going to be the guy that everyone looks at and goes, he smells like smoke. He got singed on the way in. He's lucky to be here. I'm that guy, okay? I'm going to get just under the wire, right? Fearfully and wonderfully made and smoking on the way in. That's how I'm going to get there. So I'm not expecting many treasures, but being there will be a treasure enough. But I think that I think that in God's economy, though, I really do think that there's rewards for those who have just been those people who have been pillars of the faith, who have just been so faithful and done so much. The great news is, as confusing as that sounds, right, is that we won't care. I won't care how much you have, you won't care how much I have or don't have. Because again, you take all the emotion and you take all of the greed. I only care about what you have if I want more or I'm feeling slighted, right? So take all of that negative emotion away. Well, if I then walk through heaven and I go by the Bloom wing of the heavenly mansion and I go, oh my gosh, look at that. Wow, good for Jeff. And I will be genuinely excited for you because again, there's no jealousy, there's no guilt, there's no wanting on my part. I got all I need.
You all will be jealous of my outfits.
Well, we might walk past your closet and go, "Wow, the Nadia closet, amazing!" We might get that. We might get to do that. And so that's how I think of it, right? I mean, I don't have any idea what they are. I don't know what they mean. I got no clue, because again, gold means nothing.
Right.
It's pavement.
We don't have envy, so
Yeah. So what kind of reward do we get? I mean, what does that mean? Do we? I don't know, Jeff.
Maybe it's just to reassure us that if we give something up here, that it's accounted for.
Yeah.
There in whatever way.
Whatever way it is. I mean, and obviously God's got an economy that goes far beyond ours. I mean, so the things that we value, that we think are important, I think God's got something that's far better than, greater than that. And so I think that's what we get. Now, beyond that, I can't help you. I mean, I don't know. Because I know that when we read those stories in the Bible, when we read that description in the Bible, obviously God is putting it into some kind of framework that we can understand, because He wants us to know. So if treasure's enough to make us chase it, then good, right? I mean, we can be Jack Sparrow, and we can, we can chase treasure with our greatest heart's desire. Yeah, and we'll follow the map. All right, let me get a couple more here. Be aware. Be aware. Be aware of what's going on around you. Open your eyes to see the world. I think we talked about this a little bit last week. When your heart is so full of yourself, you have no room for anybody else. If your heart's full of yourself, you're really not. Your awareness is just lacking. I mean, there's plenty of need. My favorite Christmas song, I've told you this before, is so spiritual, so unspiritual at the same time, is called Old City Bar. Trans-Siberian Orchestra does it. And I love the song. I love the song. I will tear up and weep when I hear them sing it live. I walk out the door if they don't sing it live when I hear them at Christmas time. I'm upset because I bought a ticket and they didn't do my song. I would pay pretty much for the one song. But as the guy sings it, it's a story song, and so it's got a big elaborate story. But there's a line in it that it stings every time, where he says, "You know who needs help. You need only just ask." There's always someone that needs help. There's always something to do. You can get up every day of your life and feel bad about your life, and if you say, "Okay, who can I help today?" There's someone out there that needs help today. Gosh, you live in Central Florida. Every time you stop your car, you're at an intersection, you find somebody, right? I mean, it is the world around us. It can be big, it can be small, but if you want to feel better about who you are, help meet that need, but you have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of it. How often is it that somebody does something, you say, I wasn't even aware that was going on? And there's two things that go on there. One, you don't have to be aware of every need that's out there. Okay, but you have to be willing to step in. One of the most beautiful things that happens, I think, in the life of this church, and it happens in other churches as well, is when someone says to me, "Jeff, I have this, and I want to give it to you to give to somebody who needs it. I don't need to know who. I don't want to know who. It's just a resource. But I want you to take this and bless someone else, because you're going to be aware of needs that I don't need to know." Because there are some people who will come to me and say, "Well, if I'd known that was a need, I would have helped." But see, now we go back to the private part. Well, I was not given permission to share that need with you, so I couldn't come to you and ask for help. And it's catch-22. There's kind of like, if I'd have known, I'd have done it. Okay, well, I appreciate that, but I didn't have the luxury of telling you because, well, I wasn't allowed. But if you feel compelled to do something, then do it. My goodness, don't do it. I mean, there's ways to do it. Make that need known. Let me get a couple more. Be kind. Kind of low bar, isn't it? Be kind. Be kind. Listen to yourself talk sometimes. We all get an edge to us, and we all say things in a way we ought not to say it. But if you ever notice that people are yelling at you all the time, ask yourself, are you yelling at them when you talk to them? I mean, it's a simple question. It's a simple exercise. But, if every time that you say something, someone snaps and bites your head off, stop for a minute and go, is that how I talk to them all the time? Parents have to do that with kids sometimes. You know, because kids are the great models. They will parrot back to you how they learn to communicate from you. You know, parenting 101, some parent comes in, my kid is driving me nuts. And I laugh and I say, and you're driving them nuts. It starts when they're little. It doesn't end when they move out.
And I want to move out more than anything in this world.
Well, you know, and there's a lot I could say about that too. I could probably say, and there's days your parents want you to move out too, but that's not where you're at right now. I mean, it's part of what it's the give and take of life, right? I mean, and you do that, right? You give that up. You go back and forth, and that's what it is when you love somebody, when you care about somebody. That's how it works. But also, the kindness piece.
I'm trying to get
Really just come
another
to play.
job and a car so I can start the apartment search. You know
Well,
what I mean?
and that is an awesome thing to do, no doubt about it. But never underestimate a kind word. Last but not least, and we got to be done because now they're going to be coming in, is be creative. There are tried and true ways to be compassionate and show goodness, but sometimes compassion can be unordinary. And be creative in your approach. Don't limit yourself to what you know how to do. Sometimes find out new things to do. All right, let's pray. God, thanks. Amen. Get out. All right, we got to go.